Welcome back to part 4 of our live training session here with our 2017 Camaro ZL1. In our last tutorial, we focused on the part throttle cruise area calibration process. We successfully implemented that and everything is dialed in so the car can start up and idle and start to drive. Now we're going to move into doing our full throttle tuning. This is where the torque management is going to come into play, that we really have to go in and calibrate things. So we're going to learn how to calibrate at full throttle open loop conditions, the mass airflow and speed density at the same exact time. So we're going to be doing that simultaneous calibration option that I've went through in the training course. Then we're also going to take a look at how we can get our torque modeling back in line, what we need to change in our virtual torque tables, and what we need to go and alter in something like our driver demand table if we're having throttle closure or torque management starting to pull ignition timing. We have a lot of things to cover. Let's jump in so we can check out how to successfully dial in wide open throttle conditions for a Gen 5 vehicle. Welcome back to our live training session here with our 2017 ZL1 Camaro. In the last tutorial we focused on part throttle calibration process. This tutorial we're moving into full throttle. So we're going to take a look at the power enrichment, dialing in our mass airflow and speed density operation, dialing in our torque modeling, making sure everything's in line. We're not going to get throttle closure, we're going to have proper spark timing, and we're going to make good power. So we need to get everything back in line, and just as we found at idle, things were kind of out of whack. That's going to be the same thing here at full throttle, especially with the torque modeling. We're most likely going to have to jump into the virtual torque tables and deal with going through and rescaling some things. So a lot of different moving pieces of the puzzle here. We have to worry about the injection window for the direct injection, making sure that looks good. We might need to ramp up the fuel pressure, the commanded fuel pressure for a high side pump. We'll have to see what the low side pump is doing. Again, we're going to go through this step by step and just sorting things out and making sure everything's good. I'd try to leave as many things as stock as possible in this file. Some of those things would be spark timing. We're not going to go and scale anything yet. We're just going to run with the factory spark timing and see where it's at. Same thing with the torque, the virtual torque tables. We're just going to see what it does and then edit if we need to. Always edit less than you think you need to when you're building your base map. So meaning, don't just jump into the tables and just start to put higher values or change things. Don't jump into driver demand table and the torque section and start to raise that up in the anticipation of making more power. Wait to see what the engine control module is going to do and then be reactive and change things. So just trying to simplify and streamline the process. The less we change, the better off we're going to be, and see how the vehicle is going to be performing. That's always what I do here on the Gen 5s. So I've had particular vehicles where we've had full bolt-ons and a cam, and I haven't had to touch the driver demand or the virtual torque tables. Everything just worked. I've had others where I had to do extensive work, driver demand, the virtual torque tables. I've had to go through and do a lot of flashes to get things back in line. So it's always a hit or miss. There's no right or wrong way to go about this, but I'm going to show you how I approach dealing with and calibrating the full throttle tuning here on the Gen 5s. Now, before we go in here and get too much more heavily into the full throttle, I do want to go and talk about, and I mentioned in the last tutorial, I did change those switching voltages, and I wanted to go and just take a look at the data log, the subsequent data log for that here in our VCM scanner before we go too much further. Let's go to File, Open, and then we can see here the 350 millivolt switching test. Let's just take a look at what that looks like here. Let's go to our chart versus time. We're going to find by going in and lowering down the switching voltages to 350, looks like our EQ ratio here is more in line with 1.0 of where we want it to be at. So the 350 switching voltages worked better in the table at the airflow modes that we're running them at. Again, I wanted to just, I told you in the last video, I wanted to just do a touch up with that and just cover it real quick here. So that is one change I've made. The other change that I did also make that I don't have a data log, but we'll find when we're fired up and getting it to run, the virtual torque tables. I dialed them down a little bit more at idle conditions. I found that the engine really liked to run about 25-30 degrees of spark timing. It was pretty good in terms of stability coming back into idle, but I was just doing a little bit more experimentation before filming this tutorial, and I found that if I lowered the virtual torque a little bit, we found that the actual torque amount here reported at idle was right around 10, 15, maybe 18 pound-feet of torque. That seemed to get the engine happy in terms of the throttle angle that it was holding at and the spark timing it was commanding. So 25 degrees seems to be the sweet spot for this cam, for this engine. Every engine's going to be a little bit different. I usually shoot for the 20 pound-feet of torque marker and the engine torque, but in this case, this engine responded best with the torque control system in idle when it was running about 10, 15 pound-feet of torque. So that's where I have it at now. I also did jump into the external load table and update it with the new values that I logged in my external load, the histogram here. So all things that we want to go and make sure we're doing along the way. And again, I have pretty good stability out of the idle now. If I rev it up, it comes right down, smooth idle, everything is good. So we're gonna leave it there. So I did some changes that I did make. Again, I wanted to just cover those before we continued on, and not anything super groundbreaking, but things that do matter, that do make a difference. And I do want to mention, in the virtual torque tables, I lowered them down about another, I think it was 20%. So I went into the area again, I went to the virtual torque parameters here. I figured out where I was idling at for the MAP and the air mass. I lowered this down 20%, and I just blended it. I did horizontal vertical blend, just blended that to the rest of the table, and that's where I'm at right now. So the switching voltages, I have them at 350. It seemed to be good, getting me closer to 1.0 command at lambda as I'm driving, and the idle is a bit more stable by going in and lowering down that reported torque for the virtual torque tables. So now let's turn. Thanks for checking out our teaser clip. If you want to see the rest of this video and more than 500 hours of current EFI training we have to offer, make sure you click right here. If you want to go and check out more teaser clips from this training course, click here. And you don't want to miss any of the videos we're going to be releasing on this channel, so make sure you subscribe and click here. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys later.